Alright, so today we're going to be replacing the MCU on a driver. Specifically, this is the Lexel TA driver that I have placed inside of an HO3. But it doesn't matter what driver it is as long as it's got this MCU on it, the Attiny85, or any other variants. The 13A will work too. As long as it's got 8 pins. The reason being, sometimes when you're flashing these, they can get damaged. Or, in the case of the making of this video, if you receive a package of pre-flashed MCUs with firmware on them that you want, then you can solder them in place, replace the old one with a new one, and boom, you've got new firmware on your flashlight. So, to get started, the things you're going to need, of course, you'll need the driver with an existing MCU on it. You'll need the replacement MCUs. You'll need flux. I'm using no clean flux. It's a little sticky, but it's better to leave behind if you don't want to clean it. We've got solder here with rosin core 6337, and I've got a soldering iron. Of course, a couple of toothpicks, which is the main method we're using. Now, to replace these MCUs, to get them off, it's an SMD component, so you could use a hot air station. That would do it. But you risk disconnecting these wires or moving around other bits if you don't know what you're doing. Or plus, you don't want to just buy a. You don't have to buy a hot air station. Then most people have a soldering iron. You can use that method. I prefer it anyway. To get started, we're gonna turn on our iron, get that warmed up. Of course, I forgot to mention this here, this material. Some people call it blue tack. Sometimes it comes in blue. Mine is not blue, but it's a sticky kind of material here that's used for holding pictures on the wall, lightweight things. It's mildly tacky and stretchy. If you work it up to get it nice and warm, it gets nice and sticky. And that's what we want it to be. So we're going to use this to stick down our work. I want that over here. So I put that down. We're going to stick the work into it. Support the head a little there. Alright. Keen-eyed individuals might notice that we no longer have the button pad wired up. The wire's hiding in here. I already took that off. Just in my way. So to get started, iron's nice and hot. Don't know what temperature's best, honestly, but 300 seems reasonable. Going to tin the tip, which of course you should always do. There's rosin inside of this. It's rosin core solder, so it has flux inside of it, which is good for your tip. Acidic, cleans it off. Nothing worse than a dirty tip. The main method, the way we're going to do this is you put the toothpick underneath of one of these pins to start. Shuts down firmly. And we're going to pry up gently with the toothpick while applying heat to the pin. Now, I was talking so you didn't hear it, but that pin already let loose. And then it resoldered. There we go. Alright. There's a lot of solder in there, apparently. It's not a perfect method. Doesn't always spare the MCU. Alright, that pin's out of the way. We'll sneak under and we'll get to the next pin here. That one I felt it let go. Okay, that one's also out of the way. Kind of gently bend these up to try not to ruin them, because you might want to use this later. You get the toothpick in a little deeper here, underneath the third pin. having a hard time getting that one. Can't quite tell if it's done. Let's move over here. Swap hands. So you get in here, we'll do this one now. So you get underneath of the pin, apply a light outward and upward pressure until it lets go. Okay, so that one let go. Some more toothpicks here. The third pin, second pin. That one's up as well. Get down here to the third pin. And this isn't the cleanest work, and it's not going to look the best, but there, that one. There's that one not coming up. Of course, you do this a half dozen times, and it doesn't give you trouble until you got the camera on. Well, I'm not doing it twice. So let's come in from behind here. Try to get underneath of this one. There we go. I've seen the whole thing shift there. So that second pin was off, I just couldn't see it. Alright, so that means there's only one pin left. Probably lift under here. I see the whole thing wants to move. Now be careful you don't lift or pry too hard, because you want to lift the pad on the board itself. We just get in here and touch that. It just come right off. Alright. Now what you're left with might seem a little nasty. I should have had that zoomed in the whole time. What we're going to do here is apply a little flux first and foremost. Flux is your friend. It already looks a little messy from the last time I was in here, but we'll just make this nice and good. Flux is going to make this solder lay down nice and flat. That's a little too much flux. Can you have too much flux? I don't think so. Now you want to take your iron, before actually putting it to the work though. I'm going to apply a little fresh solder. Once again, just clean up the tip. Been in there working. With the fresh solder, and of course I'm shaking the solder off. So there's a very thin layer on top of this tip here. Very thin. We're just going to run it on each one of these pads individually. Just enough to get them hot and wet and clean. It's a little bit too much over here, so I'll just scrape that off. So now there's a little bump of solder on each one of these pads. A little raised bump of solder, not too much, it's nice and even over the whole pad on each side. And now we are ready for the new MCU. Which in this case, I'm just going to reapply this old one. Give me a moment to straighten the pins out. Alright, so you'll notice I've Got these pins straightened out. And we're ready to go. Clean up some of that flux. Honestly, I should get... Let's do that properly. So clean up the flux underneath it here. A little bit of rubbing alcohol. Do the job. Okay. Now you want to pay attention to the orientation of the chip itself. If you look on it very closely, you'll see the dot right here. Dot is how you orient the chip. If you look on here, there's another little dot. So you want to match the dot corner for corner. So we're going to place this one just like so. We're going to gently set that in place. Once again, put some solder in that tip, clean it off, nice fresh solder with the flux that's in it. It's okay to have a little extra solder on your tip, not much, just a little. This part can get just a little tricky. So I'm going to line it up so that all the pins are square and lined up. I'm covering up the back pins with my thumb. But trust me that I'm lining up the back pins and the front pins. I'm lining up these pins and these pins at the same time. So let's see here. To the best of my ability. It's not easy because the solder is raised. The little bumps, they're raised. And they want to fall off. There may be a better way to do this that I'm not aware of. Maybe tacking one corner and spinning the others around. In fact, let's do that. Let's get it lined up roughly close where I think it might be. At any rate, just touch one of those down. One pin is now on. Let's bring this around. Yeah, see, learn something new every day. Bring these others around so they're nice and lined up. There. Now it's anchored at these two corners. The pins look pretty lined up to my eyes. I'm going to take another toothpick. Of course, they're heat resistant. I'm going to use that to, well, I might not need to. I might just be able to touch them one at a time. So I'm touching these pins one at a time, getting them nice and hot and pushing down. Don't spend too much time on there. And don't drag the solder between the pins. Be careful about that. That one. I'm just pushing down, kind of bending the pin down into position and letting the solder come up from the pad and cover the pin. So I got some solder there. It's useful as also is some desoldering braid. And you'll notice I have some solder over here as well. This is the first board I ever put together. It's got some flaws. It works just fine. Alright, I believe all the pins are down. They all look down. So, let's let's go ahead and reattach my switch wire. Not pretty, but functional. I'll grab the tube. We'll give this a try. See if I killed it. Just gently pry up the work out of the muck here. Yeah, it gets gunky. That's okay though. This stuff has an amazing ability to it. Alright, it sticks to itself. So just kind of work it in there a few times on a fresh edge, and it'll come right clean. Alright, let's set this back in the housing. Is that solder blob giving me trouble? Oh, it is. A moment. Another useful tool, solder wick. This stuff is great. So we're going to put the work back on the sticky here. Make sure the iron is still hot. Take some of this wick. We're just gonna. How did we get so much solder? That can be there. We're gonna lay it on the offending pad, the offending blob of solder, and work it in. Until that kind of comes off. Yeah. All right. Close enough. This is not working very well. This is new. Must not have any flux in it. Alright. It's clean enough. Don't pinch any wires. Use this toothpick to hold it flat. It's backwards. This is not backwards. Now watch the work. Make sure it doesn't spin too much. If it does, you'll pull your wires out. Alright. Q in. And one flash, that's good. Yep. Seems to be working just fine. Yep. Looking just fine. So, that is how you replace the MCU on a driver. It may not have been pretty, may not have been quick. I don't know, where are we at here? I can't see how long you've been recording. 20 minutes! I'm sorry, truly sorry. But that's how you do it. That's how it's done. And with a little practice, you can get faster at it. If you're not recording yourself, you'll make less mistakes. But that's all there is to need to know.